Hey guys, Script here with another video. I am on the Reader Viewer again because for some reason, sometimes Screen Rant is weird with my browser. So anyways, doesn't matter. This is an interesting topic to me. When I first started posting about Star Wars stuff a couple of years ago, I took issue with Rey defeating Kylo in The Force Awakens. I thought it was bad on a lot of levels, not the least of which is just diminishing your main villain and making him look weak, which then takes away a lot of the tension for the viewer, so that as the story progresses and Rey continues going on, he seems like he's not much of a threat, so why do I care what he's doing when it comes to trying to recruit her or whatever he was trying to do, or defeat her, or any of those things, right? So it also kind of made him look weak, like even just as one of the leaders of the First Order. That's one reason. There's many others, but Star Wars finally explains the real reason Rey beat Kylo Ren in The Force Awakens. So it finally explains. It's 2024. This movie it came out 9 years ago, and they finally explained this. Like, this is the problem with this IP. Like, this shouldn't be questionable at this point. Like, it's 9 years ago. Let's see if it's in some book. Star Wars reveals another key reason why Rey was able to beat Kylo Ren in The Force Awakens, going beyond Kylo's wound from Chewbacca. Now, here's the issue with the wound from Chewbacca. This is what I talked about if you guys weren't following me at the time. If the wound from Chewbacca was so devastating, how did he reach the rendezvous point before they did? He was standing there waiting for them at the rendezvous point where they were supposed to meet Chewie. How did he get there that fast? They were literally sprinting through the forest.
The Falcon's this way.
Then when they do get there and he's there, he effortlessly flings Rey in the Force and she hits a tree and he knocks her out. My argument is, if he was hurting that bad, he wouldn't have got there that fast. And if he was hurting that bad, he'd be way too distracted to just use the Force that easily. And if he could use the Force that easily, why didn't he just keep doing that? Like, if he was too beat up to swing his lightsaber properly, why didn't he just keep flinging her? Like, why even bother with the lightsaber? Just keep flicking her around, hitting trees, flick Finn. So a lot of it is very convoluted and stupid, okay? So Star Wars provided their key reason why Rey beat Kylo Ren during their final duel in The Force Awakens. Despite having no formal training of her own, Rey was able to defeat Kylo just before the Resistance destroyed Starkiller Base. Although the confrontation was initially met with some controversy and criticism, the Star Wars canon has provided a handful of reasons why the odds were in Rey's favor, including one connected to the legendary Skywalker saber. Okay, based on what I just said, it's still controversial, right? Like, those things still do not make sense. If somebody has an argument against what I just said about Kylo and his wound and everything else, feel free. Following his murder of his father, Han Solo, Ren pursued Rey and Finn into the Forest of Starkiller Base, where he easily dispatched Finn. However, Rey used the Force to reach out and claim the Skywalker saber she had initially rejected on Takodana. To that end, Rey was remarkably able to hold her own and even wound Kylo Ren before the planet's destruction ended their duel. Keeping that in mind, new evidence in the Star Wars timeline has revealed another reason why Rey had the advantage, even though Kylo Ren had the greater training and skills. He's been doing this for 20 years, guys. She picked up a lightsaber yesterday. The other thing about her getting the lightsaber through the Force, okay, fine, so that happens. That's one thing. But, she's already done a mind trick. She's already basically doing Jedi Master stuff already. So the whole thing is convoluted, and of course, they're leaving those issues out. Those are other things as well. But she gets the lightsaber. Then, while they're fighting, she starts to lose a bit, and she's literally reminded by Kylo to use the Force. When they're in that clash, he literally reminds her about it after she just used it.
You need a teacher! I could show you the ways of the Force!
And then as soon as he reminds her about it, she's like, oh yeah, and then she kicks the crap out of him, right? So it doesn't make, none of it makes sense. The whole scene is so bizarre. It's one of the worst scenes in Star Wars as far as I'm concerned, in terms of just making logical sense, okay? It's been confirmed by sequel trilogy novelizations that Rey gained knowledge and skills through her connection with Kylo Ren as a rare Star Wars Force dyad, a bond that wouldn't be fully explained until the rise of Skywalker, which was not the plan, right? The first thing we have to say here is that JJ admittedly did not have a plan, so he made her this OP in The Force Awakens with zero explanation. Now, people are going to say, well, but because they're a dyad, she downloaded Ben's knowledge of the Force when they were doing their little thing, whatever, when he was trying to get information about where Luke was out of her head, right? First of all, how would she know how to even do that, right? She just knows. So him going into her mind taught her to go into his mind, so she just knew how to do that. And secondly, why would she gain more knowledge than him? Like, why would she have more ability with the lightsaber than he does? If at the absolute, maximum, she would be the same as him. She wouldn't have more than him. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And we're also saying that, so she was able to do a mind trick because she downloaded how to do it out of Ben's mind. When I watch that scene, I see a girl resisting his mind meld. I don't see somebody download. She's not passive in the scene. She's actually aggressive. She actually goes at him and says, "You're not going to enter my mind," and blah, 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 blah. So the whole thing's convoluted, and then, of course, they retcon that in The Rise of Skywalker, and now people are looking back at those scenes and saying, "Oh, see, it makes sense, it makes sense." It doesn't make sense, and it wasn't planned, and she wasn't passive downloading. She was aggressively blocking him from entering her mind.
You're afraid.
Again, this is all convoluted and none of it makes any sense. Despite her lack of training, The Last Jedi's novelization by Jason Fry confirms Rey, it's in a book, guys, as usual, confirms Rey instinctively made a degree of Kylo's training her own, tapping into knowledge through their bond, even if she didn't fully understand in the moment. Essentially, the Force bond Kylo Ren established when he tried entering Rey's mind created a link through which his knowledge and skills were passed as Rey could access his mind in return. But again, I just explained, that doesn't jive because she's still more powerful than he is after that fact. And secondly, she was passive, she was aggressive, she wasn't passively downloading anything. And this was all, of course, done after the fact, after The Last Jedi, and after all this convoluted mess, and nobody could understand what the heck they watched. Likewise, The Rise of Skywalker novelization by Ray Carson confirms that Kylo Ren has been seriously wounded by Chewbacca's blowcaster, except he was so wounded he got there first and they were running. A blow Kylo believed inhibited his ability to defeat Rey on Starkiller Base, even though he could have just flung her in the Force. He didn't even need to use his lightsaber. It's also likely that Ren pridefully didn't take into account the increased ability Rey gained by accessing his own mind. However, the Star Wars canon has recently provided yet another reason why Rey was able to best Kylo Ren in The Force Awakens. Before the events on Starkiller Base, Rey discovered the lightsaber of Anakin Skywalker, which has been wielded by his son Luke in the original trilogy of films. To that end, Maz Kanata confirmed that it had called out to her. I did a video about this the other day. It's super corny. Lightsabers calling out. They're living beings. It's a weapon. It's so corny. Hence the vision she received in the Force upon touching the legendary weapon and its major legacy. However, new additions to the canon support the idea that it was specifically the living Kyber crystal within that spoke to Rey. So the Kyber crystal calls to you because it's alive somehow. And I did a video about that. And so you're like hanging out with your Kyber crystal. You guys are buddies. That makes her know how to like fight with a sword because the Kyber crystal taught her. As seen in the canonical Star Wars 35 by Charles Soule. Yeah, I already did a video on this. I'll put the link in the description. It's retarded. This tied incredibly well with Kanata's claim in The Force Awakens that the saber called out to Rey, which again makes no sense because you're telling me in all that time not a single Force-sensitive person walked into Maz Kanata's castle, one of the most famous bars in space, in the galaxy. Has all the flags of every planet, every civilization. Everyone knows who she is. Nobody ever went in there in decades and years. And then all of a sudden Rey shows up. Why didn't the saber call out to Ben when he was like, why didn't anything else happen? All of a sudden, years later, this random person. The implication is that when she finally answered the saber's call at the end of The Force Awakens, Rey and the Kyber forged a powerful bond through the Force, which in turn helped her defeat Ren. Why? Why would that help you defeat Ren? You can sword fight because of the Kyber crystal? The Kyber crystal that didn't help Luke. He got his butt whooped. So I don't really get that at all. Luke also bonded with a piece of the young Kyber, and he was given in Star Wars 35, receiving, which by the way, that comic book I believe is from 2020. So this is all retconning dumb mistakes of the sequels, right? It's just dumb retcon. The transparent Kyber crystal turned green once their own bond was forged, and the crystal Luke eventually uses for his own lightsaber seen in Return of the Jedi. As such, this new narrative parallel between Rey and Luke is quite impressive in terms of the great Star Wars timeline. No, it's not. It's dumb, and it's a retcon. And no, this idea that lightsaber Kyber crystals are living beings is cheese. Like, come on. It can't, like, it's just it's a stone that powers a blade, and they've turned it now into like this fetish, like, oh, I got it's a living being and I gotta like worship it in some way or something. Like, it's weird. Kylo Ren was fighting with a broken Kyber crystal. Oh my gosh. Compared to Kylo Ren and his own lightsaber, it's quite apparent that Rey had a superior bond with the Skywalker saga and its Kyber, supporting her victory over Ren in The Force Awakens. So she had a stronger bond with a Skywalker lightsaber than Ben did with his lightsaber, and he's the Skywalker Skywalker. This is because when Kylo Ren was corrupted to the dark side, he bled his original blue Kyber crystal, giving it the crimson color typically associated with the practices of the Sith, where they killed Jedi and claimed their Kyber crystals as dark trophies. See, again, everything's the objects. That's what Disney's doing. They're turning it into generic fantasy, where objects are a big deal. Generic magic, like the Night Sisters, is a big deal. They've completely changed it from what it originally was. Although making his Kyber bleed was meant to be symbolic of Kylo killing his past self as Ben Solo, he ended up cracking the crystal and making it unstable from his rage. This explains the need for the twin exhaust vents on either side of his lightsaber. Can't they just be there? Can't that just be a style? Like, do we need an explanation? Can't that just be his style of saber? No, it's exhaust vents because did something to his crystal. It's crystal! It's bleeding! Oh no! And it's crying out to me!
It's a time machine, Napoleon. We bought it online.
You're right.
It works, Napoleon. You don't even know. So are you ready?
Yeah, hold on. I forgot to put in the crystals. Okay, turn it on.
Not only does this suggest that his bond was inferior to Rey's bond with the Skywalker saber, but it's also indicative of how unstable his commitment was to the dark side itself, seeing as how he was constantly resisting the light's pull in the Star Wars sequel trilogy. No, well, that happened because Adam Driver was told when they were shooting The Force Awakens that they were doing a reverse Vader where he was unsure and fighting the dark side until finally, by the time you get to End of 9, he's a full-blown, hardcore, nasty bugger villain like Vader was at the beginning of A New Hope. They wanted to do a reverse. That's the reason he's like that. It has nothing to do with his Kyber crystal or whatever. It has nothing to do with a lightsaber bond. Okay, so you guys let me know what you think in the comment section. I think that whole fight is convoluted. Like I said, he gets there before they do, so obviously the wound doesn't hurt him that much. He flings Rey in the Force like it's nothing. He beats Finn like he's a joke. Rey uses the Force to get the saber, then forgets to use the Force and starts losing, and then he reminds her about the Force, and then she starts using the Force again, and then she beats him. And all the while, all he had to do was just fling her into a tree. But of course, it's because, the dyad, and all these, years later explanations in books. I'm sorry, but I'm not satisfied with that. I want my movies to be explained in the movie that I'm watching. If you watch the OT, you did not have to go back and read a book to understand it. If you watch the prequels, you don't have to go back into a book to understand it. This whole thing is so nonsensical. You guys let me know in the comment section what you think. Do you want your movies to be explained in books years later, or comic books literally 5 years after the movie came out? Like, is that satisfactory for you? You have to search it out. Do your homework, boy, if you want to know the story we're telling. Let me know in the comment section what you think, guys. I don't know. This is just more stupidity as far as I'm concerned. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And check out any other Star Wars content. Thanks very much. Have a good day.